My name is Kate Green, and I have the pleasure of leading the curatorial department at Oklahoma Contemporary. My background is that I am an art historian and a curator. I have worked with contemporary artists to produce projects and exhibitions for maybe 20 years in different museums, including at Marfa Contemporary, which was a satellite of Oklahoma Contemporary at one time. This exhibition is born of a lot of relationships, and it's in some ways about relationships. It's about a community. La casa que nos inventamos, Contemporary Art From Guadalajara, is really about a community of artists in Guadalajara that has become, the city has become one of the more dynamic spaces for contemporary art in Latin America. And it really provides us with an extraordinary opportunity to think through what does make a creative community thrive. What do artists need to make extraordinary works of art? And I think it's like a beautiful opportunity to do that, particularly because a number of the artists in this exhibition, Oklahoma Contemporary has long had relationships with. So I think the seeds of it in some ways were sown in perhaps 2015 with some projects that happened in Marfa with artists who are now in La Casa que nos inventamos. So it's really a beautiful chance for us to continue those relationships and also to grow new ones, and likewise to really think through these extraordinary works by all of these artists, 19 artists, about 40 works of art in all media inhabiting the entire building and campus. It really provides us with a chance to think about this question that we think of in Oklahoma City and we think of at Oklahoma Contemporary. Oklahoma Contemporary is very much part of this question and answering in many ways the question, what does a creative community need to thrive? Part of what they need is a strong art museum, a strong contemporary space, and Oklahoma Contemporary provides that. La Casa que nos inventamos has provided us with a beautiful opportunity to work with a wide range of artists, 19 artists. The works themselves, I think, provide us a chance to think about the similarities and differences between creative communities, say here in Oklahoma and Guadalajara, or US and Mexico, and therefore us as people, what are similarities and differences. And likewise, the opportunity to work with so many artists across a border is an extraordinary opportunity to think through the exciting chance to create these new relationships, to get inside the head and heart of 19 different artists versus the joys of going in depth with perhaps for another show Oklahoma Contemporary might do is maybe with just a single artist, right? So with this exhibition, we get to learn about 19 different worlds, and we also get to know 19 different worlds and people. What does it mean to work across language? What does it mean to work across that kind of distance, across borders? What does it mean to kind of drop into a community that maybe I was only a bit familiar with, to go really in depth, not only me, but our whole institution and therefore our community. So it's been an amazing chance, yeah. I think one of the ones that particularly engages me, I tend to be drawn towards art, and this exhibition is everywhere in this exhibition. Art that really makes me think, that I can't fully figure it out when I first look at it. So, for example, this work by Cynthia Gutierrez, in many ways, it touches upon a lot of the themes that run through the exhibition. There's the history of work with clay in the region, and there's a number of artists who in this show are kind of revitalizing that, or doing that differently, continuing that tradition, but doing something very 21st century with it in their own language. There is a questioning of kind of art making in and of itself, what it is and how it works. And with Cynthia's piece, in which these pedestals, things that we might normally see as a place to put art on top of, have been reversed, and the vessel, the clay vessel, is the support for the pedestal. So it's this kind of Escher-like looping of what is the art, what is the, which is the more important? Is it the foundation? Is it the pedestal that the piece sits upon? Likewise, I think that you could branch out that question to a lot of the works in the show and to the show in general of what is the foundation? Is a foundation just as much as what comes out of that foundation? So thinking about Guadalajara, is the schools, the museum, the plentiful studio spaces, the history, the palpable history that's still alive, the legacy of major modernist figures like Luis Barragán, the architect, or Orozco, the muralist. Those legacies are very much alive, and many of the artists in this show are kind of grappling with some of that, and Cynthia's is one of those, yeah. I think one of the most exciting things about working with contemporary artists is that they're working with the material of our time, the issues of our time, the materials of our time. And they're making us think differently about those materials. So for example, a number of the artists in the exhibition, we've worked with them to produce large-scale works that are made for our space and in a sense make us think differently about our very space. And so say a large steel sculpture by Francisco Ugarte, who has kind of drawn in space with steel and created this drawing, really like a drawing made three-dimensional that we as viewers get to be enveloped by. And I think that's something that I find always really invigorating when I feel surrounded by a work of art, where you can really kind of fall into it. Sometimes that happens like conceptually, sometimes it happens physically. With Francisco's piece, I was talking with a staff member yesterday, and someone said when you're inside of it, it frames the rest of the exhibition. It makes you look at all of those works differently. It makes you look at the space differently. And likewise, say, the mural by Jorge Mendez Blake. In both cases, we're working with the artist who propose something for our space, and then we help them figure out the best way to make that happen. In these two cases that were the sculpture in space by, the drawing in space by Francisco Ugarte and the mural by Jorge Mendez Blake, in both cases we worked with the artist to get instructions that then we worked with a team to realize. And so there's a collaborative nature to that, which is really exciting. I think it also gets like everyone who's been involved, even, if they're just cutting the steel, like why am I cutting this steel, and what does this have to do with art? And likewise with the folks who we had involved with painting the mural. So I think what is exciting to me oftentimes about installations that have this large-scale component is that they excite not only your eye and mind, but also your body. They get you kind of three-dimensionally involved in the ideas and the art, and they also often get so many people involved in that as well and excite their minds and bodies along the way. I think this is an extraordinarily elegant show. Viviana's done an amazing job selecting, of course, first the artist she wanted to work with, and by extension, the artists we had the opportunity to work with, and then working with each of them to think about the works that that would make sense for this exhibition, and then how to arrange them or organize them, or visually, and really interested in the relationships that have been kind of drawn out visually. Say the tile motif that you see in several pieces, or clay. That was something that made manifest more palpably once I saw the works together. That has then kind of entered into my imagination, and I'm just imagining Francisco here and Cynthia here, and how these kind of people are in dialogue through their works and are alive through their works is really kind of beautiful to me too. Yeah. There are so many kind of things to unpack in each work, so I really want to show you a few of those little elements that you might not otherwise pick up upon. Let's go. For example, Isa Carrillo's triptych, which is an extraordinary group of 3 paintings. At first, they might look like the starry sky, but then you notice that one has just the sky, the next has the outline of a hand, and then the next even more of a hand. So there's a kind of suggestion of a narrative here that then when you go a little bit deeper, you find out that it relates to this history of the Mexican muralist Orozco, who's from the area, from Guadalajara, and famously, at least, myth, in terms of myth, or perhaps legend, exactly. The legend has it that he shifted from architecture to becoming an artist when he lost one of his hands in an accident, and then turned to art. I really love how this piece brings all of that together once you spend a little time with it. And the kind of relationship between these ideas and the stars, because Isa's created this hand, this kind of floating hand, made a constellation out of that hand. So the kind of connection, the cosmic connection between who we're meant to be, who we are, and how that comes into being. I think another thing that that you might pick up on is, if you spend time in the show, is that there's 2 cactus, perhaps even more, in the show, including the one, this one by Alejandro Pereira Almanza. And he has, while at first it might look like, this concrete rebar, I don't know, structure of some sort, when you spend a little time with it, it begins to take the shape of what it is, which is a cactus that is kind of realized through this material of concrete and rebar, this building material, this symbol of the rural kind of countryside is being created using the material of urban space, but it almost is like it's decaying. So I think it says a really interesting things about potentially the shift, the promise of the of cities, and maybe the failed promise of the 20th century kind of economic promise of urbanization in Mexico, and what it has done to kind of both spaces, what has become of it and what has become of our rural spaces, what has become of that promise, what has become of the spaces people have left for that promise. Some of you might know that cactus actually have a really strong spine that holds it, gathers the moisture deep in the soil and brings it all the way up to these very tall structures, these tall plants. And the spine is in some ways quite actually visually reminiscent of what the artist has made this cactus out of, this kind of marooned urban cactus out of rebar. And the actual cactus spines, in fact, look a lot like this kind of skeleton. A skeleton of a cactus actually looks a lot like rebar, a skeleton of like a dying cactus, yeah. This piece, I think one of the many things I love about this piece is that you can, it excites your kind of mind and body and does that in different ways depending on where you are. So when I'm out here, you know, walking towards it, it looks like one thing, this kind of drawing in space with this metal looks like one thing, and then you come inside of it, which you can do, and it becomes something very different. It both becomes maybe a little bit scary, like is this structurally, you know, has it been, is it just propped up? Is it soldered? You know, you don't know. It is soldered, but you don't know that necessarily, or your body doesn't know that, even if your mind does. And then we were talking, I think I mentioned this, that one of the staff members here at Oklahoma Contemporary mentioned once you're inside of it, it kind of frames everything else. So it becomes a kind of artwork about art. And that's a beautiful thing to me.